This is just a personal question that I have. Is it a conflict of interest if a citizen of Titusville is on the Titusville Environmental Commission, which is supposed to kind of make sure that the developers don't destroy our environment, let's say, with development practices that are just too destructive. And that same person sits on the Titusville Planning and Zoning Commission, who makes recommendations to City Council about whether or not to allow certain developmental practices. And then that person is also, in the past and currently, involved in representing the developers, and he's paid to act as guidance for developers, drawing up plans and things like this, and also going to City Council meetings and arguing for his clients, the developers, that they should be allowed to do this or that. And the person I'm talking about is Mr. Woody Rice. The first time that I encountered Mr. Woody Rice, he was in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission as a spokesperson. Let's say he was representing a developer who had a 14-year-old conditional use permit. Those are supposed to last 4 years maximum and only be extended if there is a state of emergency or if there is ongoing work continually progressing and the extension is needed for that work to be finished, which of course was not the case here. There's nothing on that property at all. But I just want to make the point that Mr. Rice was the person representing the developer in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
This is 14 years old. How many years? 14? Mm-hmm. All right, so in the initial CUP would have been around 1 year, and then 2. Then even at 2007, I can't see the continuation working. In 2009, I think there was some continuation, but
there was, I recall, yes, 2007, 2009, 2008, 2009, there were continuation by state law.
yes.
Yeah, so that was above and beyond our code.
But by your own code, it would have been expired before then. And so I'm just saying that originally I thought that it would have was the CUP, is the CUP for height on this particular one?
Yes.
Okay, and then it came in thereafter and changed to an ALF thereafter, right?
We do not have a formal request for it to be changed to an ALF. We did have a pre-application meeting with someone at one point.
Well, okay, so we're looking at the public cards, please.
Woody Rice.
Woody Rice, 505 Indian River Avenue, and I want to thank you all for at least trying to explore different options that we would have and trying to make this work for my client, Ms. Miller back here. And she's a first-time developer, and it's a big project. It is. It's an ACLF, and just sort of put in perspective, the other big project I'm working on is Sandpoint. And I've been working on it for almost a year now. So big projects don't come together real quick. The problem that Ms. Miller has, especially being a first-time developer, is that because of the way the CUP, the satisfaction of the CUP ordinance is that you have to have a business tax receipt or what have you, we can't get those things until the building is CO'd, okay?
So that last clip was from 2019, but fast forward to 2022, and now Mr. Rice is a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Titusville, but yet still representing developers. And that's kind of where I have some questions about a conflict of interest. In the next part of the video, you're going to see that the Planning and Zoning Commission has taken up the issue of whether or not to leave the Titusville tree ordinance the way it is, the way it was agreed on after 2.5 years of work, or whether to change it once again. And that was at the behest of Mr. Rice. He felt the tree surveys were too difficult for the developers and asked that it be considered that they can not be required to do certain types of tree surveys. Mary Spar, who had worked on this diligently for many years, starts to get up to clarify something, and Brad Parrish, who works for the city, says, yes, go ahead, Mary, because she actually has the answer to their question, but she's dismissed by Mr. Rice, who has her sit back down so that he can explain things from his point of view, and in doing so says, yes, this very measure that they're considering at the planning and zoning meeting would affect him personally, because he is currently in the planning stage of a development that would be affected by the very thing that they are discussing and then going to vote on. So I don't know, that seems a little weird to me. It does seem like a conflict of interest, but judge for yourself.
Alrighty, so,
Are there any other questions
I
for
do.
Mary? Ms. Richardson?
I don't know if it's for Mary, it may be for Member Rice and the staff. Was this item brought up at TEC, or did this just develop?
No, but we never looked at this incentive at all at TEC, didn't even know, it wasn't even part of our discussion at all.
Ouch. Okay. Is there a
But-
reason
but-
why it wasn't looked at?
Well, so what you're, I want staff to answer this, okay? You're saying by keeping C1 in the code, it negates anyone being able to use incentive 1 or 2. Is that what you're saying?
No, they can still use the incentive, it's just that there's a part of that incentive they won't be able to use. So
What part?
Well, the last sentence there, they'll have to provide all the information related to a survey, tree survey. And as you probably know, it can be very expensive providing all that detailed information.
But
To
part
areas that
of the
aren't being
TEC
mitigated.
The discussion that TEC did have is that if you're preserving area that you're not developing, you just do a count. You don't do a survey. So doesn't that meet exactly what this is saying? Maybe I don't understand what this exactly is saying then.
Well, I caught just the last sentence there under incentive 1 on page 61 of your packet.
Right?
So if you meet all the requirements of this incentive, you read it there, it says on developments where this is achieved, tree survey of significant trees is not required outside of the total canopy area. Whereas the other section on page 11 will require all that information.
Even if it's in the development area, then I'm not required to survey it under this incentive. It's not necessarily outside the development area, but inside the development area, if I meet the tree canopy requirement, I don't have to survey trees anymore.
Yeah, all tree surveys of any type is all going to be within that development area. Yeah, in this case, it's talking about significant trees.
Right, and this one's significant, but I just want to make sure I'm picturing what you're saying, because what TEC said, outside the development area, we just do a count, okay?
A count of
Trees, you have an area that you're preserving, okay? Then you don't need to survey, because you're not going to touch it. That was the train of thought. So all you were giving, staff was the number of 20-inch oaks, the 26-inch or whatever, okay, is in there. It doesn't go to the expense of doing a location, because you're not touching it anyway, so it doesn't matter. My question is, because I want to get this straight in my head, is that this incentive is saying if if I'm inside my development area, because I've already taken outside my development area, I've taken care of not having to survey all that stuff. If I'm inside my development area, if I meet the tree canopy requirements, I can stop surveying significant trees. Is that correct statement or not?
Well, it reads to me, tree survey of significant trees is not required outside of that total canopy area. Mary, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I care about him. The reason I care about him, because he's the administrator of the code, he's not, but he reports to the administrator of the code. So how they're going to interpret this hinges on everything that people do.
I think if you look back on this. Thank you. Back on page 11, that language there, I mean, I can see where Mary's going with this, is that future staff or any administrator of the staff of this code is probably going to say, well, the most stringent is required here. And so, you know, there's this incentive language here, we're only saying we're only going to allow you or ask you for a certain type of information, but here on page 11, we're going to treat everybody the same regardless of what incentive you're using. And it just seems to ask a lot more information than we probably need. And even though I look back at the incentive and say, you know, I'm going to give you that break, we might not apply it consistently. I think that's what Mary's trying to get at. Just to be honest, frank with you though, we have only started to apply this code to one development so far, and we haven't fully implemented it to the end, to approval of a site plan. So this is a work in progress, and all of us are still learning. I mean, even today, I had to go spend my day reading through this code again. So every change we want to make to this, we want to be as very surgical as possible, because
I feel your pain.
yeah,
I'm in the middle of designing a site right now under this code, and I'm trying to understand it myself,
Right.
okay, of how it gets implemented, and does that make sense, and will it work?
So there you have it. In an unusual move, staff asked Mary Spar to clarify, which she absolutely could have done, and Mr. Rice dismissed her and asked her to sit back down, which is a little weird. That's not how that usually goes. And then he admitted, well, you know, this would affect him personally in his business dealings because this particular thing they're discussing and voting on would affect a development he's working on. So you decide, conflict of interest, yes or no.